Thank you.
Good. So over to you.
So good morning everybody and welcome to this session. A nice cheery welcome on a Friday morning. Wonderful. So, as you can see, this session is called Dystopia or Utopia, you decide. And the you decide bit comes at the very end, so that'll be just around about an hour's time. And thinking back to when I first started, going back in time, when I first started using the MBTI, that was around 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago. And one of the biggest things that's happened in the world in that time really has been the march of digital technology, the digital revolution, as it's often called. And thinking back, the sort of phone I had when I first started using MBTI looked like that. Actually, these I think are coming back in, sort of retro style, but this was the original one. The sort of phone I have now looks a lot like this, and that's actually a few years old now. What I used that phone for was phoning people. Remember that? Phoning people? That's not what I use it for most of the time. This is all internet, all that clever stuff. So the digital revolution has made a big change to most of our lives, to all of our lives. Over the next hour, we're going to explore a little bit about what those changes are and how perhaps they're particularly relevant to us as people who work in the world of type. Before we do that though, let me just say a little bit about myself and then I turn over to David. So my name's John Hackston, for those people who haven't met me before. My job title, it's a wonderful job title, I'm Head of Thought Leadership. One of these days I'll work out what it actually means. I think what it's about really is doing two things. It's finding out what's going on out there, bringing information into OPP, and also putting stuff out there into the world, really sort of talking in particular about how wonderful type is in different contexts. So that's what I do. David, what do you do?
Hi, I'm David Hunt. I'm the digital, I look after digital strategy for the group, so that's CPP and OPP and the other organisations in that group. And my job is basically to get excited about technology, which is kind of lucky because it's what I naturally do. And I get to look after thinking about how technology is impacting industry and the world of work, how we can use technology in our organisation and digital transformation, and even think about little experiments we might be able to do using technology to improve what we do and collectively as a community. So there we go.
Thank
and
you.
I'll come back in a bit.
So the question we're going to ask you today is, on the basis of this march of technology, the digital revolution, are we heading for that dystopia or a utopia? And we are, after all, on the type session. It is a forced choice question, so we'll come back about the forced choice question at the end. To help you to answer that question, these are the sorts of, I forgot I did that, there you go, get copies way outside. So, dystopia, utopia, you decide. To help you to answer that question, what we're going to do is we're going to go through these sorts of things in the next hour. So we're going to talk about where we are today, what today's digital world is, where we've come, if you will, in the last 20 years, and also, perhaps, how that may have impacted on us. How that may have impacted on us, how it may have changed our behaviour, maybe how it may have changed our personality. And some evidence behind that as well. We're going to talk about where we're going next, what the future workplace might look like, what changes are still in store for us in the workplace, and we're going to talk about how a knowledge of type and how you as type practitioners can perhaps help yourselves and others cope or deal or work or take advantage of those changes that are coming up. And that's all the information hopefully you'll need to answer that final question, are we heading for a dystopia or a utopia? So that's what I'm going to cover in the next hour. We've put some time aside for questions at the end, but if you want to ask questions as we go along, please by all means do so. But not yet, clearly, which is nice. So, let's talk a little bit about what's happening today in today's digital world. And if you look at what IT has traditionally been used for, mostly, especially in the past, it's been used, frankly, to do the same old stuff we always did, but hopefully to do it faster, mostly, not always, but mostly easier, and perhaps better as well. So to give you an example of that, anybody recognise what that is? Abacus? Quick show of hands, who has used an abacus in the last 6 months? I knew maybe somebody. Who has used a calculator, computer, or other electronic device to make calculations in the last 6 months? Show of hands. So for most of us, not necessarily all of us, using a calculator is probably faster, easier, and possibly better, at least for most of us, not necessarily for all of us. Similarly, for those people of my generation, this is going to cast our minds back into the past, folks. Who remembers the wonderful joy, the excitement, the sheer pleasure of using log tables? Now we're getting the age profile of the audience. Again, I use those things in the past, but frankly, I think using a calculator was faster, mostly easier, and definitely, for me at least, better. So that's what IT has typically been used for in the past. And if we think about how this applies to the way we use personality instruments, actually it's been the same. Mostly, we've taken online questionnaires and done the same thing, faster, mostly easier, possibly better. That's perhaps a little bit more than we want. So what we used to do was to give people questionnaires on paper, and they fill in answers on paper, and then we did the exciting business of scoring up all the results, and then we interpret those results and fed back to people. These days, most people, not everybody, but most people probably use an online system of some sort. They administer those questions online, the scoring happens automatically, and possibly a little bit of interpretation as well. So certainly faster, mostly easier. You can decide for yourself whether or not that's better. But it's the same process. We're going through exactly the same process we always did, but we're using IT to do it. And frankly, that's a little bit clunky. For digital natives, people who have grown up with this technology, this is perhaps quite an old-fashioned approach to using things like personality questionnaires. And perhaps we're just scratching the surface of what we can actually do if we use digital technology, if we apply digital technology. Because in other parts of our lives, most of us are using IT and digital technology much more intimately, in a much more integrated way, than actually we're using with personality questionnaires. But to think about where this might be going, we need to think a little bit about the context and where we've come from in terms of the digital revolution. We need to understand that context. And to do that, we need to talk to somebody who knows a little bit about digital technology. Hopefully there's somebody in the room.
Thanks, John.
There you go, David.
So over the last few decades, computing technology has obviously changed quite a bit. It's become more portable, more powerful, more connected. This is actually some of my personal computing history. I learned to program on some of these things as a teenager. I owned some of these gadgets. They were wonderful things in their day. I actually was a product manager for that thing, which was a tablet in the early 2000s. So a really interesting sort of collection of devices. I do have my own little personal sort of archive of these things, as you'll see in a minute. But that has all led us during these relatively short period to these incredibly powerful handheld devices. These devices have incredible near ubiquitous connectivity, almost limitless compute power in the cloud, almost limitless storage in the cloud, and of course access to lots of these really addictive apps that we all come to hear about. And this has spawned a new generation of organisation, a new kind of business. This coming together of these technologies has kind of created these businesses which have essentially become household brands and names. So they're kind of the tech rock stars. But it isn't just the technology that's changed. These businesses have essentially changed the way we live and the way we work. Apple created the first real game-changing smartphone. And this is one of those original devices. This is the first generation Apple smartphone out of my private technology collection, which is the drawer in my office. But there is actually, as John reminded me the other day, there is a fantastic collection of technology at Bletchley Park. If you get the chance to go to their technology museum, you can see a lot of this stuff if you're interested. It is really fascinating. But they created the first real viable smartphones, and Google with their Android platform, they pretty much got the world sewn up, incredibly powerful devices. But these devices allow us to connect into the services and products offered by these other organisations. So all the information, the goods, the entertainment, all that kind of stuff that you can pick up. Google, the world's largest advertising company, and don't get misled, this is exactly what they are. They're used pretty much to find anything about anything, and pretty much the nemesis of any pub quizmaster. Amazon has changed the way we buy stuff from what they call bricks to clicks. And Facebook, an interesting organisation that might have been in the news of recently, but they help us curate our lives and allow us to connect to people we vaguely know around the world. And actually they have a model which is deliberately designed to tap into that kind of addictive nature of human personality. Now, we talked a little bit, and I know yesterday Rob mentioned about the sort of Facebook stuff with what's going on, but they have a really interesting business model. We get their services for free in return for trading our privacy. And they give us adverts based on what they pick up about information about us. And it's worth just seeing, if you haven't seen this, if I can make it all work, so let's see. It might take me a moment just to get the mouse in the right place. Here we go. A very awkward looking Mr. Zuckerberg. Should be able to hear this, hopefully. We'll just do about a few seconds of it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
No.
So there you go. So he's not particularly comfortable, and he had his data taken by Cambridge Analytica as well. So it is a kind of an interesting thing, and part of what's been going on with Capitol Hill is they're trying to force him to suggest that he will change his business model. And it's not in their interests to do so. It's not in Facebook's interest to do so. So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out. Back to where we were. Right, okay. So that's Google and Facebook. Trade your privacy, get services for free. But we've got people like Airbnb, where you can take a spare room in your house or a flat or something that you've got access to, and you can rent that to tourists. You've got people like Uber. If you've got a car, you can work for Uber and you can drive people to wherever they need to get to. And these are part of what's called the trust economy, where reputation is everything. You've got Amazon, who, you order something today, it arrives tomorrow. You've got people like Netflix who've just dispensed with the whole physical goods thing. They just ship you bits over the internet pretty much instantly. So it's kind of instant gratification. You want something, you've got it now. And you've got people like Tesla. Now, Tesla are interesting because they've really kind of built the first commercially viable electric cars. But those cars are little more than a sensor platform with lots of cameras and radar and all sorts of things collecting huge amounts of data, which is used so that they can build models of how to build driverless cars. That's really what their end game is. Actually, all of the services and products that we really use today are really things that when we use them, we leave behind a digital trail. And these organisations are amassing this data so that they can produce new products and services. These businesses are the disruptors. They're the organisations that have kind of changed the way business is working, the way in which we operate, the way we live our lives, and the kinds of ways in which we interact with each other. More so than pretty much any other generation. But now we do have probably an entire generation that have lived their lives with this kind of technology around them. So what kind of impact is this actually having on society? Is it changing who we are?
Looks like we're about to find out. So, as David said, has this digital revolution changed who we are? Has it even changed our personalities in some way? And if you read the papers, you might certainly think so, because there's a lot of very scary headlines out there about how this is all changing us, rewriting our brains, doing all sorts of terrible things. But actually, we thought we might want to look to see what the evidence is. And there's not a huge amount of evidence for this, actually. There's lots of research looking at the way in which our personalities, for example, differ and interface and interact with the way we use digital technology, but not so much out there saying, well, perhaps we're changing in some way in terms of personality. So we thought perhaps it would be a good idea to carry out some research to have a look at this in a little bit more detail. So what we did was we looked at all the people, and you may be in amongst these people, but you're not among, so that's fine. We looked at all the people who completed the MBTI Step 1 or Step 2 questionnaires on our online platform over the last 10 years. And that's essentially 1.3 million people. So it's a reasonable size sample. And this is what we got in terms of the type distribution. So you can see that the most common types, the most frequent types are ESTJ, followed by ISTJ and ENTJ. But even the types which are least well represented, so ISFP, for example, that's still, and I'll have to double check my numbers here, 12,700 people. So it's, we got a little bit. It's nice to do stuff with all these big numbers, isn't it? We don't get to do that. So the sample should be big enough to show any changes, any things that have happened over time. By the way, please do feel free to take photos, but if you want a copy of the slides afterwards, just give me a shout. Because if the digital revolution has changed the way we live, we behave, perhaps it's changed us too, at least in terms of our reported type. So, that's enough for now of myself and David talking. I'm going to get you to do something. I'd like you to get together with a few more people on your table. It could be the whole table or just twos and threes, whatever works for you. And I'd like you to have a discussion just for 5 minutes about how you think the proportions of type, reported type, might have changed over the last 10 years. Are there any particular types that you think might have increased in terms of the proportion of the sample? Are there any particular types you think might have decreased? There's less of those people around now than they were? And perhaps you think actually we've all stayed the same. So I'd like you to get together with someone else at your table, have that discussion for 5 minutes, and then we'll see what the data actually says. And while you're having that discussion, do also think about why that might be as well. Okay? Over to you.